Good morning, guys. I'm Chris, and welcome back to another episode of Rift Amps. Pretty much done with this Dexter build now. I told you they don't take long at all. Everything's all wired in, all the sockets, 4, 8 and 16 ohm speaker jacks on the back, all the pots are done, input jacks done. All that I've got to do on this now is the heater wires, the mains wiring, which I can't do until the faceplate arrives, and then there's just a shielded wire from the volume pot over to the V2 socket. So yeah, that's pretty much done there now. So I can put that to one side because I do finally need to get stuck into this Tone King. This is the one that came in, it's a Sky King, and it came in at the same time as the Car Rambler that's down there. Now that one is now fixed. I've been playtesting it every day. All of the initial issues that he complained about are gone, so I'm pretty much happy to let him have it back. So the next amp, same customer, is the Sky King. So this one has come in for the input jack's knackered, as you can see. So we've got a new input jack to fit on now. We'll have to investigate, see what's going on there. There's that. It says it's quite noisy, and it's worse on the lead channel than it is on the rhythm channel. One of the 6L6s, he says in the back, does red plate. And so we need to find out whether that's the 6L6 itself or if it's the socket. So we'll look at that. The other thing is that the reverb knob, here it is, just spins and spins and spins. So it probably just needs tightening up and setting to the right place. Everything else seems to be okay, but this one just spins. Yeah, they're all okay. So we need to look at that as well. So I can't remember, and this is probably my bad memory more than anything else, I can't remember being inside a Sky King before. I've done Imperials, Mark 1 and 2, and there was another one as well, but I can't remember if I've been in the Sky King. So really interesting to open this one up and see what's inside. So in the back of the cabinet, we've got some goodies. We've got a new input socket that the customer has supplied. We'll have to check that that is indeed the correct one, but it is there. In the jiffy bag, we've got the foot switch, the original foot switch for the amp. So we need to confirm that that all works. We've got the mains cable in the back. Got a spare rectifier valve, 5U4, which is in there. I'm not going to get it out. And he also supplied the other box of valves, so we should have enough spares to get going. So let's have a look at the rear of this. Mains input, fuse, on-off switch and standby. We've got a pentode and ultralinear mode. Interesting. So it's not pentode triode. It actually switches. Well, if it's true ultralinear, it will run the screen grids off a separate transformer tap. Or, sorry, a tap on that winding. 4 and 8 ohm switch on the back. Got the built-in attenuator. That's cool. One for each channel, and it's a notched setting. So you can set how many dBs of attenuation you'd like, and the foot switch connection as well. I'm sure you've seen already, but it's got a Celestian creamback G12M. So M means medium magnet, 65 watt, and it's a 75 hertz cone. I'm not sure in the creamback whether they did a 55 hertz cone. I'll have to look that up, but I do like these speakers. And the other thing we can see in the back, of course, is the reverb tank. Right, so let's pull the rear panel off. I think, can we get away with it? No, we are going to have to remove it. And then we can loosen the shock-mounted chassis bolts, 4 of them, to drop this chassis down, and then we can look inside. Right, this made me laugh. So I've had this amp here for a couple of weeks now, and obviously I haven't touched it yet. And I'm looking at this Tolex, and it's like the F-style, the rough Tolex that they call it. They did a rough blonde and a rough brown. But this is like an olive green. And I've been looking at it thinking, do you know what? I don't really like that colour. Olive green. But obviously, just removing this panel, it's actually brown. It's brown that's gone green. I've never seen brown Tolex go green like that before. I know it does change slightly colour because it was when it's brand new. It's got a slight pink hue to it, and then it kind of ages more into the standard brown that we all know. But this has gone green, olive green. So yeah, that's just. I'm not making it up. Look, it's green. You can see it transitions to brown on the edge. So, I mean, was this in a shop window for a long time? What's caused it to go green? Does anyone know? Comments down below if you have an answer. Because I've never seen that before. Never, ever seen that. Chassis has been removed from the cabinet. So the chassis bolts are Fender-ish style. They're very long. They go all the way through the chassis. And then there's a Keps nut that secures it from underneath, and they've got these rubber grommets, we'll call them grommets, on them as well. Now, one of them, so we've got 3 that are good, and this other one here is really chewed up. You see, that's really chewed up. Let me get it to focus. Yeah, there you go. So I remember the customer did ask about whether I could source a replacement for him, so we'll have to see about that. But also this one had 2 Keps nuts on the underside. So we've gained them. Anyway, so let's get you a good shot on this chassis, because this is quite impressive. I've already had a quick look inside, but as you'll know, on the Sky King, the controls are top mounted, and the rear controls are obviously on the rear, horizontally mounted, we'll call them. First thing we'll do before we open it up is we'll do a top side or underside inspection. Let's have a look, shall we? So, first things first, massive, absolutely massive power transformer. USA made. This is obviously their own unique number there. So, but that thing is huge, right? I mean, there's my hand. Nice chunky unit. No choke. Output transformer. Interestingly, it's quite wide, but it's quite narrow. I mean, the stack on it is only, including the covers, just over an inch. Yeah, it's 4.5 inches wide. That thing's ridiculous. Right, so let's have a look then. Serial number 1300-220. No idea what any of that means, but there we are. Tiny reverb transformer. Again, it's probably a Fender style. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 preamp valves. And from what I can see, got 2 12AX7s, an AT7, which is probably the reverb driver, 2 more 12AX7s, 2 6V6s, and we've got a GZ34, a 5AR4 rectifier. Lots of locking hardware, which we like to see. This is great. Means things aren't going to work their way loose with vibration. And we know these things are pretty well built anyway, so let's not be overly concerned with that. Okay, let's spin her over then, shall we? Oh. I will set up a proper chassis stand, of course, but just while we're here. Okay. So, because the controls are top mounted, but everything else is inside, on the back panel is horizontally mounted. Right, let's get this right. He's done it with this folding lid design, which is actually very impressive. So, shall we open it up and have a look inside? There we go. So what we've got here is each valve or tube has its own assembly here with all the components on. You can see if we zoom in, there you go. Where's my pointer? Here it is. So each socket is served by this own, should we call it a sub-assembly? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then there's one for what looks like the power supply as well, all the way up here. There it is. That's a nice top-down view for you. So the 2 output valves are not on one of these assemblies. V6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey? I only counted 5 preamp valves. No, this one doesn't have one. Right, okay. All your sockets along the front. And lots of flex in them, so when you fold, you're not going to cause any damage. Same for the dual light on the top. So, wow. Yes. Lovely standard of wiring, the build quality. We've got a date. Now, it's an American amp, so it's going to be December the 11th, 2013. I think. If it's in the UK, it will be the 12th of November. So yeah, we'll go with that. We'll say it's a December amp. Just look at this. So do you remember I was saying with the Matamp that you needn't be scared of this style of amplifier. You've just got to not the Matamp, sorry, the Rambler. It's all point to point inside, and a lot of people say, is that thing easy to service? Well, of course it is. It's no different to the old radios and stuff that we all learned to work on. But this thing is kind of the next level up. So, right, where do we start? Let's have a quick look at the attenuator circuit on the back. So we've got 2 very large resistor here, 50 ohm, 20 watt resistors. Got 2 coils here, and what looks like a bunch of relays. Can we see what they are? Yeah. All just built very well. I mean, as far as build quality and standard goes, these really are up there. So I can't have any complaints. It's just very interesting. These. I mean, what do we call them? I think sub-assembly is correct, but the valve socket is mounted underneath. Can we see? Can we get in and see? Yeah, you can just see the base of the socket there. All the components on there. So these were all would have been assembled and manufactured and put together separately and then loaded into this chassis. That's phenomenal, isn't it? What are we going to do? Okay, thankfully we haven't got a lot to do. We've got to replace this input socket. Let me get you a good shot on that. There you go. So we need to swap that one out. We need to find out why one channel is more noisy than the other. Probably a valve issue, most likely. That'll be certainly a good place to start. And the other issues were, that reverb knob. Oh, and the red plating 6L6. So we need to investigate these output sockets, check the operating conditions and things like that. So even though it looks complex, we still start with the basics, a good visual check, voltage measurements, see where we are, take it from there. But I'm not going to do anything until I've swapped out that input jack, tightened up the reverb knob. Which one is it? It's this one. Does it look like it's rotated? No, that's secure in there. So it's just the knob on the top, isn't it? Yeah. Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Okay, let's crack on. Okay, let's have a look at the Matamp then, see if we can work out why it is down on power. So let's go through the basics, and when I've got severe crossover distortion like I was having, it's usually an indication that the amp is biased too cold. And now, so let's take, so I've gone through and I've taken some measurements, and for simplicity, I've called this V1, 2, 3, and 4. That's not their actual V name, but just for working this out, it's easy for me to label them that just when I write things down. Okay, so you'll notice on the back panel, bias test points. So in here, the lower one is the test point, the upper one is the adjustment. You can see there's the trim point inside. Bias test point set to 0.28 volts DC, no signal. Okay, and the idea is that when you come in and you measure on that test point, you get a voltage reading. Now I've been messing around, and these are currently at 0.127, not 0.28. Okay, now that's after I've been messing around with it. The initial measurements that I took showed that they were set to 0.0296, 0.0305, and so on. So they were biased to just a tenth of the correct amount of current running through them. Look, so that V4, as I've called it, only had 2.96 milliamps running through it. Now, how have they made that mistake? Well, it's because the cathode resistors, the bias resistors, are not 1 ohms, they're 10 ohms. So everything is out to what you would expect by a factor of 10, right? So, you know, they've measured what they think is 29.6 millivolts running through that valve, or milliamps once it converts, right? But because it's a 10 ohm resistor, it's only 2.96 milliamps. Right, okay, well that does explain it. So what I've done is I've gone through and I've tried to set each individual valve to where Matamp say it should be 0.28. What they had done is set it to 0.028, so, you know, a factor of 10 lower. Problem we've got now, unfortunately, is the bias pots are now maxed out, and I can't get anywhere close to the correct figure on V4, as I'm calling it. I can only get 12, so once I do the conversion, 12.7 milliamps, not the 28, or 28 that they want on V2. About the same. V3, only 10 milliamps, and on V4, 13.3. So even now, they're far too low, and I can't adjust that bias pot even more. Now, what does that indicate to me? Well, that indicates to me that we've got a severely worn out set of 6v6s. I've done all my other voltage checks inside the amp, and the supply voltages appear to be okay. They seem to be okay. So I suspect that these 6v6s are quite worn out and are going to need replacing. So how do I confirm that? Well, the easiest way, of course, is to fit a new set and retake the measurements. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. Just wanted to show you, however, even with them running at 10 to 13 milliamps of current, when I drive the amp now, we actually get quite a nice sine wave. So now we are just at the point where that top squares off. We'll back it down. 14 volts RMS. And 14 volts RMS into 8 ohms is what I'm driving, is 24.5 watts. Now we're getting somewhere, getting close to that 28 watts that it should be. So we'll try a new set of valves. We'll try and bias them up, see if we can get them where we want to. If not, we're going to have to do some further investigation. Okay, and the other thing I need to do is to make up a speaker cable for the Blackhawk combo that's going out. So I've shown this before, but I'll go through it again for those who are unaware. What you need is some wire. Now what I do is I use this stranded single core wire, both in blue and brown. Take 14 inches of brown, and this is about the right length from speaker to the back of the chassis on a standard 1x12 combo. But this is how I do it because I know it always works. We take 14 inches of brown, 14 inches of blue, now this wire here, this is actually mains cable, which is used for mains cable. So this stuff is good enough for about 400 watts. No, 200 watts into 4 ohms. That's what I'm trying to say. This stuff here. So, for a 36 watt amp, it's more than ample. This style is, is good enough for about 400 watts anyway. Anything more than that, you want a speak-on connector. So, yeah. So we do a 3/8 cut on the wire strippers. Just set my guide. One, two. Okay, so on your... Can you see properly there? Can we get you a better angle? No, that's the best we can do. I'll try and work here. Right. First thing I do is you twist your strand, and we're just going to tin that with our solder. And then I'm also going to tin the common of the plug itself. Then all you got to do is come along and combine the two. See how quick that was? Done. Right. Same with the brown, which I use as my positive. We'll just tin that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a right angle in it. Oh, sun's come out. through there, bend it back on itself, lock it into place. So I want a good mechanical connection. Yeah. Solder that into place. Okay. And if there is any, just trim the excess off. Okay. Now, that positive terminal there, once you screw on everything else, there is a risk that it could short. So I just get a tiny bit of heat shrink. And I'm going to bring that over my positive terminal like that, just to separate them. Can you see? Yeah. Like so. Heat gun. Lovely. Then the locking tangs, as you might call them, just bring those down just to make sure everything is locked and secure into place. So now there's no risk of that positive terminal shorting against anything. Now I twist this all together because I want these to be twisted. Yep. Now I've got 12 inches of heat shrink here, so I had 14 inches of wire. I've got 12 inches of heat shrink now, and that's going to go all the way over and all the way up, completely covering that. So I've gone over the tangs completely up like that, you see? And that leaves me about that much on the other end. Done. Get my plastic slip cover. Oh, it's warm. Feed it on. And then the outside of the connector. And that's the speaker cable. And that's good for about 200 watts at 4 ohms. All we need to do now is just get these two ends the same length. Trim them back 3/8 of an inch. So 3/8 of an inch is it's the halfway point between 1/4 of an inch and 1/2 an inch. So it's that halfway point there. Twist those. We can tin those already. And then all I've got to do is solder those to my speaker. And that is how you make a simple speaker cable for a guitar amp. Done. Okay, so quick update on the Matamp. So I didn't have a matched quad of 6v6s in stock. So what I did was I just pulled them all out, stuck them on the valve tester, and they actually test strong. So the issue, as far as I'm concerned at the moment, isn't with those 6v6s. So what could be the issue? Why can't we get the valves fully biased? Well, the next stage, of course, is to check the bias supply out. Now, when I spoke to Matamp, he did say check the B plus supply, the negative voltage supply itself, because if there's any sawtoothing, it indicates that one of these caps, these blue caps on the back, which are the we'll call them the filter caps for the bias supply. They have been known to go faulty in the past. So what I'm going to do is I've got some on order. I can't use the ones I've got in stock because they're too long, I'm afraid, for the spacing in the turret. So I've had to order some in. They'll be here next week. We'll swap those out, and then we'll keep going with this, seeing if we can work out what's going on. Because at the moment, I'm getting a lot of double or false positives, or double negatives, false positives, whichever we're going to call it. In that, I think I've got a diagnostic direction going, and then I hit a brick wall and something contradicts itself. So that's what we're going to do with that for the time being. So what I'm doing is I've now got the Sky King on the bench over here. And before I can investigate why there's red plating on one of the 6L6s, there was a couple of jobs I had to do. And the first was to swap out the input jack. Now, I've removed it, and we can have a look. Oh! So this is the one that was in the amp, and I'm not sure why. Let's try and get you a stable. Somebody's made a makeshift washer for it out of some plastic. A double layer one, look. To hold that into place. And here's the socket itself. Now, there's a 47 nanofarad capacitor across the positive to negative, or you know, hot to common, whatever you prefer to use. But what I have noticed, if we get it in the sun, you might see the actual terminals are very tarnished and quite dirty, actually. So, you know, you can try cleaning these things up, but for the cost they are, not an issue. So what I've gone ahead and done is put that new socket in, and I've put a new capacitor in place, and I've soldered it all in, and that's all good. So that was the issue. The other issue was the reverb knob kept spinning. Well, it was just loose. So I've now I took it off, repositioned it properly, and now it stops at the right points. So that's that job done. So now I can fire it up and take some measurements on the sockets and things. So that's where we are with the Sky King. Well, unfortunately, guys, that's all we've got time for this week. Thank you so much for watching. You know, I really, really appreciate everyone who tunes in and watches these videos. Please give this video a thumbs up, comments down below. Hit the notification bell if you haven't already, so you get notified whenever I put a new video out. Obviously, there's our weekly Sunday video, and then, as you've seen, I have been putting out videos during the week. You don't want to miss those. Please subscribe if you haven't already. If you want to join the channel, you can do. You can order some merch through the website, blah, 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 blah. All that YouTubery stuff out of the way. I have got something interesting for you next week that might come out during the week, or I might save it for next Sunday. So keep your eyes peeled for that, and I shall catch you all at the next one.